This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
The deaths of Rob and Michele Reiner have rocked Hollywood. The two, known for their work on and off the camera, both in and out of the film industry. As the world tries to piece together what led to one of their sons, Nick Reimer, being named as the one responsible for their deaths at their Brentwood mansion in Los Angeles. District Attorney Nathan Hochman updating the investigation at a press conference Tuesday afternoon.
Today I'm here to announce that our office will be filing charges against Nick Reiner, who is accused of killing his parents, actor-director Rob Reiner, and photographer-producer Michele Singer Reiner. These charges will be 2 counts of first-degree murder with a special circumstance of multiple murders. He also faces a special allegation that he personally used a dangerous and deadly weapon, that being a knife. These charges carry a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. No decision at this point has been made with respect to the death penalty. We have requested...
Friends, family, colleagues, and politicians alike all coming out with messages of support and love for the couple. One distinctive statement, though, coming from the American president himself, who even doubled down on his words after people in his circle came out against them.
Became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape.
So what legacy does Rob Reiner leave behind? And why did Trump take it upon himself to inject his thoughts into one of Hollywood's latest tragedies? I'm Maria Kestane, and today on The Big Story, I'm talking to Sadaf Ahsan, culture writer and co-host of the Reheat podcast, to discuss Hollywood's latest tragedy and the impact Rob Reiner leaves both with his art and his activism. Sadaf, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, we're recording this episode on Tuesday, just barely a day after the news broke of Rob and Michele's death and the shockwaves that this tragedy continues to make across Hollywood and, North America at large, just given Rob's influence both on the screens and behind the camera. I want to get your reaction to the story so far. What did you think when the news broke Sunday night?
I couldn't believe it. And I got to say, it was also, as a journalist, a little bit shocking to see how many outlets were reporting on the news without actually getting confirmation about what happened for real. I don't know if you saw that, but I was watching it all unfold on social media, which you should never do because it's always erratic. You don't know what's the truth and what's not. But I'm a big fan of Rob Reiner. I've been a fan of his movies for so long. I grew up with them, so I was devastated. I didn't want to believe the news. And then finding out that his son was the prime suspect was horrifying, honestly. You don't want to believe something like that. And I think a Hollywood tragedy always just seems so unbelievable, particularly. It's like a movie was playing out all night. It was wild.
Yeah. Get into that a little bit. When you were a little shocked on how these outlets were reporting, what were you seeing?
Gosh, it was quite a few people, and I'm going to name check People magazine directly, but they were reporting that Nick was involved, Rob and Michele Reiner's son, before anybody had and before there was official confirmation. And I've been in the journalism world for at least a decade, and one thing that we're always taught, the number one thing, you don't want to report on something, especially like a murder, until you know for sure what happened and who did it, and if that's actually the case. You don't put names out there until you know. And I remember there was different reports at the time on who found their bodies. At first it was Billy Crystal, then it was their daughter who lives across the street, then it was someone else. So it was a lot, and it was all very dramatic. It was a lot of rumors, which kind of just amped up the heat and the panic, I think, around the story. It was weird.
Yeah. As we heard in the intro, Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman, announced at the press conference Tuesday afternoon that they will be filing murder charges against the son, Nick, which, as you said, is so heartbreaking and just jarring to hear, really. We don't necessarily know all the caveats of the relationship between Nick and his parents. We do know that Nick openly struggled with substance addiction, and the latest reports, again, this is all speculative, this is all anecdotal, but latest reports from people close to the situation saying that there was a holiday party the day before they were murdered, and there was some argument that kind of broke out between Nick and his parents, and it was disruptive, apparently, according to one anecdote. Again, all of this anecdotal, but what do you make of the son being called responsible in this situation?
I mean, I think it's really upsetting, right? I think even if it wasn't a celebrity family, it would be so devastating to hear that, because that's both of his parents who are gone now. And we know that they had a long time complicated relationship. So it's not something his parents have talked about a lot. They did make a movie called Being Charlie I think it was about a decade ago, if I'm not wrong. And it follows Nick's story. His character is named Charlie in the movie, but it's a very similar story. He wrote it. His dad, Rob, directed it. And I feel like it's interesting because we kind of knew that much at the time. And I think now when you watch it back, it'll probably be even more enlightening, because it followed his parents having a drug intervention and trying to bring him back to the child that they remember him being when he was younger. And they're very much at odds, he and his parents. And I think now that there's so much speculation over what was the actual relationship between Rob and Michele and Nick, and how bad was it, people are going to go back to that movie and start poking holes and taking a look at it a lot closer. And listen, I think anytime you have a child who's battling years-long addiction of any kind, you're going to have a complicated relationship. And Rob had said previously that it was really, really painful for him. And he wasn't always sure that he handled it correctly, and that he used to play, I remember this, he said he used to play kind of the bad cop and bring in the tough love. And his wife, Michele, would kind of be the one who was a little more outwardly compassionate. So, God, I don't know. It's like going back over all of this now, it's just so much more devastating, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And, in the press conference Tuesday afternoon, when asked whether or not issues surrounding mental health will be brought forward in the court, the DA, he did said if that there's evidence that mental health was at play here, then it will be brought here. What do you think the chances of are in terms of issues surrounding mental health, or mental health being a main caveat of this investigation?
I hope it does come up. I mean, I think it's so clearly an element here, right? I don't think you go through something like this involving your parents without mental health being a factor, right? I mean, I think that's the case in a lot of murders and situations like this, but I don't think we talk about enough. I mean, God, it's still a taboo topic. It's not something Hollywood is open about, certainly. I don't think Rob or his wife have talked about it all that much, particularly pertaining to their son, but I think there's no way out of it for this one. Yeah, and it's interesting too, because clearly their friends, their network in Hollywood knew Nick as well, and so I'm sure so many people have opinions and takes, but I hope it is a factor, and I think it's something that hopefully will open up a bigger discussion on particularly young men and what they go through when it comes to their mental health. And as so much has been happening the last little while with shootings, with situations like this where young, specifically white men, are involved. And I think that needs to be a much, much bigger discussion. What does that play there?
I want to get into Reiner's work specifically. You know, it spans across decades and across genres, really. Some of the classics, including When Harry Met Sally and The Princess Bride. Why do you think his films resonated with people so much?
Oh, that's a fun question. I think he's so interesting because he maybe has the greatest run of iconic films that anyone has. Okay, so you mentioned a few, but I want to throw in a few others because there
Totally.
was also This is Spinal Tap, such a beloved comedy for so many people. Bullets Over Broadway, Princess Bride, Stand By Me, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men. Like I could go on and on. That's an insane run. And I think part of it is because these movies really shifted the industry. It shifted the way that a lot of filmmakers approached comedy, but then also drama and then also romance. I mean, one of the most fun little stories around When Harry Met Sally, and I feel like it's going viral again now because of his death, but he met his wife Michelle while making that movie. And originally he said he was going to end the movie with the two of them not ending up together, which is insanity. And he was like, but then he fell in love and he was like, no, they've got to be together at the end. And I think thinking like that is still pretty unique in the industry, you know, just leading with your heart. And I feel like he did that a lot. It's why you will get so many beautiful little moments of romance in that, in Princess Bride, and then also really great dialogue and fight scenes and A Few Good Men or Misery. Like he was so involved not just in the directing, but in the writing and the acting. And I think because he also started as an actor, it gave him this other perspective and approach. Yeah, I think he was special.
I love that you mentioned Michelle there because Michelle Singer, she's an iconic photographer and producer herself. Tell us a little bit about Michelle. You know, how does she fit into the picture? You know, we know they met on the set of When Harry Met Sally, but what did her career look like?
Okay, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Maria, because I think, yeah, she was a really great woman behind the man. She worked with Rob a lot at his production company, which is called Castle Rock, which I especially love because it's based on the Stephen King fictional town in Maine, and he and Stephen were friends, and I'm just obsessed with all those little details. But so she worked with him there, and then she had her own production company, and she was very involved in the comedy world, which I think is so cool. So she also produced a legendary Albert Brooks documentary, and she was nominated for an Emmy for that. So, and then also a photographer all at the same time. So she had her hands in a lot of things, and I feel like together they made a really great team and a Hollywood power couple.
Totally. Continuing on about his family a little bit, you know, Rob could really be described as a nepo baby himself, right? He is the son of writer and actor Carl Reiner. How did that impact his career, you think?
I mean, it's kind of incredible because they really are a Hollywood family, aren't they? Because Carl Reiner was, I mean, I'm sure so many listening already know that name. He was a legendary comedian himself for years and years. And you've got to look up his face if you don't know who I'm talking about, because the similarity between their faces and their smiles is just so sweet. But yeah, he was a huge deal. And I think he definitely injected a little bit of his own comedic style and tone into Rob. But then let's bring the woman into it again too, because Estelle, Rob's mother, was also a real talent herself. So she was a singer, she was also an actress, and the two of them were a power couple of their own. So you could kind of say being in showbiz ran in the family. So it was kind of a no-brainer, I guess, that Rob would end up following in their footsteps. And you know, he started in acting before he was a director, and he was in All in the Family for years. He was in that for almost a decade throughout the 70s, and that was a really beloved American sitcom. So this family loved comedy. Very funny. I think even now it's funny because I know a lot of people who only recognize him for New Girl, which was one of the more recent shows he still did acting appearances on, and I love that because he's hilarious on that too. And I feel like he's a little bit of a cross-generational talent, which not a lot of people are. You know, like everybody has their Rob Reiner movie or TV show, and he's got that voice that still just makes me so happy every time I hear it.
He's definitely connected with many generations. Myself, my parents, you know, it's crazy. You know, Rob made it very clear throughout his career and that his impact and responsibility wasn't just contained to the sets and the stages. It really transcended into politics and activist spaces as well. Can you talk a little bit about what exactly he was passionate about?
Oh, yeah, sure. And this would also highlight a little bit of why Trump might have hated him so much. So Rob, big time liberal, long time activist, particularly when it comes to, I would say, civil rights, education for kids, public health. He was really, really dedicated. And I think it's particularly special because, again, he has such a signature voice. So when you would hear him speaking up and going to rallies, giving speeches, it means a little extra something when you hear that voice. So one of his biggest accomplishments, I would say, was founding the American Foundation for Equal Rights. Now, if you don't know what that is, it helped fund and support the legal challenge that ultimately led to the U.S. Supreme Court striking down California's Prop 8, which means it led to the advancement of marriage equality all through the country, which was massive, massive. He was so instrumental in that. He's also been, or was, deeply involved in early childhood development and education policy. This is one of my favorites because I think a lot of people don't know about this, but he had a nonprofit called First Five California, which is actually funded by a tax on tobacco products, which I just love. He advocated for publicly funded early learning programs through it, parental support services, healthcare access for kids. Like, this guy really gave a shit. He was also a member of the Social Responsibility Task Force, which that advocates for the social use and the responsibility, I guess you could say, organizations like Hollywood have over the use of things like tobacco or scenes that show violence or sexual violence or anything like that in the entertainment industry. So just about how we can moderate it and what that could look like if we had better analysis and advocation for the people who are actually watching it and taking it in. So that's even just a little bit. Like, he was all over the map, but I feel like those were the biggest landmark accomplishments.
Totally. And he, as you said, he had his hand in a lot of organizations and longtime liberal, as you said, when the reactions started pouring in about his death, you got a lot of people on the Democratic Party side, really coming out and sharing their own personal stories and feelings. We have the Obama family, we have the Bidens, a lot of them just really saying, even Kamala Harris and, her and Doug, coming out and saying, we're so saddened to hear about this. He definitely had his friends on that side, and his enemies on the other side, definitely. Which leads me to, talking about the elephant in the room, this extremely, I don't even know what the right adjective is for the remark he made on his Truth Social account. I do want to read it out for those who haven't read it yet. It's definitely relatively colorful.
Sit down if you're not already.
U.S. President Trump taking to social media, him posting this after hearing the news. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife, Michele, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness. And with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before, may Rob and Michele rest in peace. I mean, so many one-liners here. What did you even make of this note passing? I reading it. It starts off relatively, he was in a mournful, he was sad and he acknowledged that it's a very sad thing. And then he gets into the crux of it becoming political. Really, what did you make when you read this?
Oh my gosh, I just think it's ridiculous. I think, what I would love to do is just pretend he didn't say anything, because I think it's so wild to give any kind of airtime to a comment like that. But we have to, because he's one of the biggest voices in the world right now. And unfortunately, people do listen and they run with what he has to say. But I think it's a reminder that he himself is also a very big symptom and member of Hollywood not too long ago. And I think for him, this was one of those moments where you could kind of see it as a quote unquote opponent who has taken a fall. And I think that's very bizarre. I mean, like I said, Rob and his wife were very liberal. Rob was also very, very verbally anti-Trump for years. And he was also actually working on a documentary series about Trump and Putin and the relationship together, which Trump obviously knew and was not a fan of. So I'm not surprised by even that little Russian joke he makes, if you can call it a joke. But yeah, I think it's just ridiculous. And I think it's just really sad because, like you said, I mean, people from both sides of the aisle in the political world were calling out Trump for saying what he did. And I think if you can get Republicans and Democrats in agreement that he's being terrible, that says a lot. I mean, it's interesting too, because even just today, before we recorded this, Michelle Obama was on late night talking about how she and Barack were going to meet the Reiners for dinner the day after their passing, which is wild. And I think that shows you how close Rob and Michelle's ties were to the Democratic world. Again, Trump knew that, but it's just the silly rantings of a man. Giving him more credit. I hate it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what really struck me here was, not too long ago when Charlie Kirk passed away, obviously the comments on social media about his passing definitely filled every single social media platform. And, Trump was very vocal about comments, denouncing any negative things that people had to say about Charlie Kirk after his death, and kind of going after people if they didn't make praising remarks about Charlie. And then now to hear Trump saying this very rather disturbing post about the Reiners, I mean, I just, the hypocrisy is a bit interesting to me.
It's heavy. It's thick. I think it's one of those things where, I teach students journalism, and one of the things that I talk about constantly is you need to have media literacy with everything, not just the TV shows and the movies that you're watching, but every single thing that a politician says. And this is a really good example. We have to think about why he's kind of picking and choosing here, right? And who he's choosing to ally himself with even in death, and the way that he makes these jokes. We can say all we want about how ridiculous he's being, but he's doing it for a reason, and he certainly wins over some people when he talks that way. I think it's interesting too that just as recently as September, Rob Reiner was also on late night, and he was raging against Trump, and he made a joke about how, this might be the last time you ever see me. And now that feels haunting, and I'm not putting a connection there, but I think it's interesting because his implication was obviously, oh, Trump's going to hate me for saying this. He might take me out. Again, a joke. But now we're here, and now this is the way Trump is joking. I think it's very dark. It's such a bleak time in politics that a president can say things like this about a comedian who also was really beloved by America and who was a voice and a face of American comedy and storytelling for so long and still is going to be. It's unfortunate.
Sticking with Trump a little bit here, it hasn't been the smoothest past few months for the American president. A lot having to do with the Epstein files, people within his inner circle, coming out against him and speaking out against him. Again, on this topic, even a lot of GOP leaders kind of denouncing his comments about Reiner's death. It would be ironic almost if this played a key role in turning the tide against Trump.
Oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. I think it certainly could. I think you always wonder with Trump, is there a point where it gets too far? And maybe this is it? Like, have we arrived there? This could be it? Yeah, I think anytime you have someone who is so beloved like Rob, to then make the unlikely choice of putting a hit out on him in this way where he's joking, I think is just so ugly. And I think it was really a poor choice. And Trump's just certainly gotten to a point where he feels like he can say anything, but yeah, I do wonder, maybe he's not going to get away with it much longer.
It will be an interesting few weeks to come as we continue to learn more details about what happened and the deaths. What do you think Rob Reiner's legacy will be?
I love that question. I think, and I hope that it'll be his beautiful storytelling. There are so many gorgeous, gorgeous films and TV shows that he acted in and movies he acted in that I think are going to live so long. They already do. I mean, Princess Bride is a movie that everyone has seen when they're growing up, right? And I think When Harry Met Sally, I have a poster on my wall that I'm looking at right now, I think all of these are, like I was saying, cross-generational. They're timeless. And I think we should be really thankful to this amazing filmmaker who brought them into our world and really did shift the way that I think even now filmmakers tell stories in so many different genres. So I'm really thankful for that. I think those are going to speak for him for so long.
All right. Well, Sadaf Ahsan, culture writer and co-host of the Reheat podcast, thank you so much for this reflective conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And that was The Big Story. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this conversation. Email us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or find us on Blue Sky at The Big Story. Be sure to share this episode with someone you think may find it interesting. You can listen to The Big Story every day on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Maria Kestane. Thanks for listening.
You've got a big day, so you use Unstoppable Scent Boosters to give your laundry nonstop freshness. So no matter how long the day goes, you
can't stop this power, this walk, this pose, this strut, this look, this talk.
Your clothes will be so fresh you can confidently strut into that end of the day meeting like a
bosses. Let's talk business in my office.
Add new Unstoppables beads to your wash for 24-hour nonstop freshness so you can smell unstoppable.